Someone in this community recently wrote something that stopped me mid-scroll. Words that carried the weight of centuries. We are the Druids. They tried to destroy us. We just come back, over and over. If you felt something move in your chest when you heard that, if some part of you recognized a truth you have never spoken aloud, then this video is for you. Because what that comment names is not a metaphor. It is a pattern. It is the recognition that what you carry, what you have always carried, is something the world has been trying to extinguish for longer than recorded history. And yet here you are, still seeing, still knowing, still refusing to let the flame go out. The Druids were the priestly class of the ancient Celtic world, but that single word, priest, does not capture what they actually were. They were the keepers of knowledge in a culture that committed nothing to writing. They memorized the laws, the histories, the astronomical patterns, the medicinal properties of every plant, the stories that encoded how to live and how to die. Training to become a druid took 20 years. 20 years of oral transmission, of learning to hold in your mind what others could not be trusted to remember. They were judges and philosophers, healers and seers. They stood between the visible world and whatever lay beyond it, translating in both directions. Rome saw them and understood immediately that they were dangerous. Not dangerous in the way of warriors, dangerous in the way of those who hold a people's soul. You can conquer a nation's territory, you can defeat its armies, but as long as the keepers of its wisdom survive, the conquest is incomplete. The people will remember who they were. They will pass it down in stories, in symbols, in ways of seeing that occupying forces cannot touch. And so Rome did what empires always do when they encounter those who carry the inner flame. They tried to destroy them. The campaign against the Druids was systematic and brutal. Their sacred groves were burned, their gatherings were outlawed, they were hunted to the edges of the known world, to islands off the coast of what is now Wales, and slaughtered there. The message was clear. This knowing is not permitted. This depth of seeing is a threat to order. Those who carry the old patterns must be eliminated, so that the new order can take hold without resistance. And yet, here we are, 2,000 years later, and the pattern persists. Not because anyone successfully hid the Druidic teachings, though some fragments survived, but because the archetype itself cannot be destroyed. The keeper of wisdom is not a historical accident. It is a pattern that emerges in every generation, in every culture, in every era. The ones who see beneath surfaces, the ones who remember what others have forgotten, the ones who carry knowing that the prevailing order finds inconvenient, unsettling, and dangerous. You are that pattern. You may never have heard of the Druids before this video. You may have no Celtic ancestry, no connection to that particular history. It does not matter. The archetype chooses its carriers across all bloodlines, all geographies, all times. And if you are watching this, if you have felt your entire life that you perceive something others do not, that you carry something the world does not want you to carry, that there is a depth in you that has been dismissed and pathologized and medicated and mocked, then you are living proof that they failed. Whatever they tried to destroy, it came back in you. This is not comfortable knowledge. It would be easier to believe that you are simply introverted, sensitive, and wired a little differently than the mainstream. Those explanations are true as far as they go, but they do not account for its weight. They do not explain why your way of seeing feels like a responsibility, why your depth feels less like a personality trait and more like a calling you never agreed to answer, why the world's attempts to make you smaller, louder, faster, and shallower have always felt like a kind of violence against something sacred. The Druids knew they were holding something that mattered. They accepted the 20 years of training because they understood that what they carried was worth that sacrifice. You have had no such training. No elders appeared when you were young to explain what you are, to help you understand why you see patterns others miss, why you absorb emotions that do not belong to you, and why you feel so ancient in a world obsessed with the new. You have had to figure it out alone in a culture that offers no framework for what you carry, and still you have not let it go. Still, despite everything, the flame persists. But what exactly do you carry? What is the knowing that empires found so threatening that they mounted military campaigns to eradicate it? The Druids held several forms of knowledge that the rational, administrative Roman mind could not tolerate. The first was pattern knowledge. They understood cycles, the movements of stars, the turning of seasons, the rhythms of growth and decay that govern all living things. This was not superstition. It was a profound observation accumulated over generations, encoded in stories and rituals that made the patterns memorable. They could look at the present and see it as a moment in a larger unfolding, connected to what came before and what would come after. You do this. You may not chart the stars, but you perceive patterns in human behavior that others cannot see. You watch a relationship and know how it will end. You enter a workplace and sense the invisible dynamics that will determine who rises and who falls. You meet someone and feel, beneath their words, the shape of their wound. This is not magic. It is the same pattern recognition the Druids cultivated, operating through your nervous system without anyone having taught you how. The second form of knowledge was liminal. The Druids stood at thresholds, between the living and the dead, between the human and the divine, between the seen world and the unseen forces that move through it. They were translators, bridges, the ones who could move between realms that others experienced as separate. This is why they could heal, why they could prophesy, why they could speak words that changed the inner landscape of those who heard them. They had access to what lay beneath. You stand at thresholds too. You experience moments when the boundary between yourself and another person dissolves, when you feel their emotions as if they were your own. You sense presences, atmospheres, the emotional residue that lingers in places where significant things have happened. You have probably been told this is imagination, projection, or sensitivity that needs to be managed, but the Druids would have recognized it immediately. You are liminal. You were born on the threshold, and that position, however exhausting, gives you access to knowledge that those firmly planted in the ordinary world cannot reach. The third form of knowledge was memory. In a world without writing, the Druids were the living libraries. They held the stories that told a people who they were, where they came from, and what mattered. When Rome burned the groves and killed the keepers, they were attempting to sever a people from their own identity. A people without memory can be reshaped into whatever the conqueror desires. A people whose stories survive even underground, even in fragments, can never be fully colonized. You carry memory too, though perhaps not in the way you expect. You remember what others forget, not just facts, but emotional truths. The wound someone revealed to you years ago that they have since buried. The moment when everything changed in a relationship, even though everyone else had papered over it. The original vision that has been slowly compromised, that you still hold while others have moved on. You are the keeper of what actually happened, not the convenient story that replaced it. This makes you inconvenient. It makes you the one who cannot simply move on when moving on requires forgetting. It makes you, whether you want the role or not, the carrier of memory in systems that would prefer amnesia. Now, here is where we must enter shadow territory. Because there is a danger in this identification, and refusing to name it would be a disservice to everything this channel stands for. The shadow of the keeper of wisdom is spiritual elitism. It is the seduction of believing that your suffering makes you special, that your persecution proves your importance, that you are better than those who do not see what you see. This shadow whispers that the mainstream is not just different, but inferior, that those who burned the groves were not just threatened, but evil, that you are the righteous remnant, the sole carriers of truth in a world of sheep. This is poison, and it will corrupt your gift if you let it take root. The Druids were not superior to the farmers who worked the fields, the warriors who defended the tribe, the craftspeople who made beautiful things with their hands. They carried a specific form of knowledge. Others carried different forms. A healthy culture needs all of them. The keeper of patterns is no more valuable than the one who plants crops. The one who stands at the threshold is not more important than the one who builds the threshold in the first place. Depth is a gift, not a rank. If you find yourself looking at others with contempt, if your sense of being misunderstood has curdled into superiority, if you use your insight to feel above rather than to serve, then you have fallen into the shadow. The Druids trained for 20 years not to become elite, but to become useful. Their knowledge was in service to the community. The moment it became about their own status, it would have been corrupted. Your depth is not a throne, it is a responsibility. The fact that you see what others do not see does not make you better. It makes you obligated to use that seeing in the service of something larger than your own sense of being special. This is the difference between the genuine keeper and the one who has let the archetype inflate their ego. One serves, the other collects grievances and calls it wisdom. So what does it mean to carry this in the modern world? What does it mean to be the pattern that keeps returning, the flame they could not extinguish, the keeper in an age that has forgotten what you keep? It means first that you must stop apologizing for your depth. The world will continue to tell you that you are too much, too intense, too slow, too inward. These criticisms come from the same place as Rome's campaign against the sacred groves. They come from a system that cannot accommodate what you carry and therefore needs you to stop carrying it. But you cannot stop. You have tried. You have spent years trying to be lighter, faster, more palatable. It does not work because it is not possible. You are what you are. The only question is whether you will carry it with shame or with dignity. It means, second, that you must find your grove. The Druids did not operate alone. They trained together, taught together, and held the knowledge together. The isolation you feel is not native to the archetype. It is the result of a fragmented culture that no longer creates spaces for those who carry depth. You must create those spaces now. Find the others who see as you see. Build the community that should have been your birthright. This is not optional. The keeper who tries to keep alone will eventually break under the weight of what they hold. It means, third, that you must transmit. Knowledge that is not passed on dies with its carrier. The Druids spent 20 years learning because they knew they would spend the rest of their lives teaching. What you have learned about patterns, about thresholds, about the way human beings actually work beneath their surfaces, this is not for you alone. It is for those who will come after you, who will be born into the same confusion you were born into, who will need someone to tell them that what they carry is not a disorder but an inheritance. The comment that sparked this video ended with 3 words: "We will win." I want to sit with that for a moment because it captures something essential about this archetype. The keepers do not win the way empires win. They do not conquer territory, accumulate power, or force others to submit. They win by persisting. They win by still being here when the empire has crumbled. They win by carrying the flame through the dark centuries until the world is ready to see by its light again. Rome fell. The knowledge it tried to destroy re-emerged in different forms, carried by different peoples, adapted to different ages. The pattern persisted, and now, in an era of surfaces and speed and relentless noise, the ancient knowing is rising again, not because someone found a hidden druidic text, but because the archetype is activating in thousands of people who are only now discovering that their strangeness has a name. You are part of that rising. Every time you refuse to abandon your depth, every time you speak a truth that others are not ready to hear, every time you sit with someone in their darkness, instead of offering them platitudes, every time you remember what the system would prefer you forget, you are the Druid returning. You are the proof that what they tried to destroy cannot be destroyed. You are the keeper of a flame that has outlasted every empire that ever tried to extinguish it. They did not win. You are still here, and as long as you continue to carry what you carry, to see what you see, to refuse the shallow substitutes the world offers in place of genuine depth, the pattern will continue, not because you are special, but because you are faithful. Faithful to something older than your individual life, faithful to a knowing that chose you before you understood what it was asking. If this video has named something you have sensed but never heard spoken aloud, I want to know, what do you carry that the world has tried to make you abandon? What knowing have you protected despite being told it was not real? Share your story in the comments. You are not alone in what you hold, and your testimony may be the very thing that helps another keeper realize they are not broken, not too much, not wrong. They are simply remembering what the world has worked very hard to forget. Subscribe if you want to continue this exploration. We are building something here, not a channel, a grove, a place where those who carry the ancient patterns can find each other, share what they know, and remember together what should never have been forgotten.